Welcome back to the Fitness Stuff for Normal People podcast. I'm Tony.
And I'm Mariana.
And the fitness industry right now is just not what it could be. It's become something built on unrealistic expectations, aesthetics, and external validation, directing attention away from what actually matters. The bottom line is we're not just trying to provide just another fitness podcast. There are enough of those, but completely change the fitness industry for the better by providing you with the knowledge and tools to give you confidence in applying the best possible evidence-based training and nutrition into your own life, where today we are doing a deep dive into your metabolism and the science behind it. More specifically, what it is and how it actually functions, talking about whether or not there's any truth behind, quote unquote, is what I'm doing, boosting your metabolic rate, breaking down the major components that make up your metabolism as a whole, and talking about different diseases and disorders that can actually lower and slow your metabolism and to what degree you can actually expect these to do so. That along with so much more. And y'all know we gotta plug it. If you're listening to us on Spotify, hit that follow button. So every single Monday we drop an episode, it pops right up so you don't miss a thing. And if you got a few extra seconds, you can rate us a 5-star, or you could leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening. That's what makes me happy.
And if you want more after each episode, you can join us on Fitness Stuff Premium for just $5 a month. You get a bonus episode every single Friday where we answer your specific questions. We do weekly bonus episodes every Friday and so much more, like a monthly $300 Legion Athletics giveaway, complete training programs like the 12-week push-pull leg program we dropped a few weeks back, exclusive discounts, and much more. You can sign up in our show notes below. And a quick note from our sponsor from day one, Legion Athletics. Thank you for sponsoring this episode and every episode. We love you guys. If you are looking to re-up on your pre-workout, your protein powder, this is our first recommendation. As you guys probably already know, we love their whey protein isolate. It is readily digested and absorbed, and it tastes phenomenal. They have so many different flavors to choose from, but if you are a fan of unflavored, they also have that. They also have a plant protein, which is great, and they also have casein protein, so a lot of options that you can play with there. If you want to get 20% off your first order or double points on every order after that, you can use the code FSPOD. The link will be in our show notes below.
Have you ever had their unflavored? I have not tasted their unflavored yet.
No, because I'm just not a unflavored person, but the formula is really nice that it blends well into everything. So I'm sure that their unflavored is great.
Yeah, I feel like they've got so many flavors though that whatever you're trying to mix protein with, you would be able to add to the flavor with a different flavor of protein.
Yeah.
I don't know. To each their own.
Yeah.
Maybe you just hate taste. I've never met someone
some
who does
people
that.
do not like the taste of protein in general because it's like artificial. So
I just feel like the unflavored would be even worse. But you know what? If you're listening to this and you're like, screw these guys, that's all I drink. Message me. Let me know what I'm missing out on. Maybe I need to try it. Today's been off to a rough start. We've been a little frazzled. I've been frazzled since this weekend, honestly. I tried to go out and see. Have you ever heard of the bioluminescence?
Yes.
In the ocean in San Diego?
Mm-hmm.
So it bloomed this year. It's this algae that blooms. It's usually every couple of years. They call it the Red Sea during the day, but at nighttime when the algae like crash into each other, it creates this really cool bioluminescent like glow. And we went to several different beaches this weekend because it's in bloom. Couldn't find it.
Really? Those are like, if you go night swimming on the Cape, which is where I grew up on the East Coast, you would always see the bioluminescence like everywhere.
Oh, really?
It would light up. Yeah. Sometimes there'd be more than others, but you'd always see them. So that's why I'm familiar with it. So it's
I was so bummed. Like I'm telling
really
you,
cool.
we invested hours into it, and I was like, I'm gonna go home tonight just bummed out, and I couldn't sleep.
That's like me trying to find the Northern Lights in Iceland, and failing every time. I lost so much sleep that whole entire 2 months.
But don't you just look up?
Never saw them.
Doesn't it just take up the sky? You just look up.
No. There's specific points where you have to go at specific times.
I thought it was just the whole sky.
No.
Oh.
Mm-mm.
Interesting.
No, never caught him, but hey, was there for 2 months and didn't find him, so it's fine.
You know what? You win. That hurts a little bit more than me just going down the street.
I know, it's one of those things that I'll never get over.
That one hurts a little bit more. And if you did notice, don't make fun of these glasses. I'm trying out blue light glasses for this entire week. Have you ever noticed a difference when you wore yours?
Yeah.
My
I've
eyes are actually, this is day 2, and my eyes are actually feeling significantly less fatigued at the end of the day,
yeah,
just
I
because I'm
like
in
them.
front of screens.
Hmm. They're definitely
I
helpful.
kind of look like a dork. Maybe it's my new persona. This will be my new era that I'm going into. Now, today, I had to bring out, that'll be me. The smart glasses come out for smart episodes. We're talking about your metabolism. Your metabolism, which is one of the, I think we were making this comparison before the show started. On the show before, we've talked about how people misuse words in this industry all the time.
Yeah.
Calories is one that we talk about all the time. Like half the people on the internet right now that use the word calories, a calorie deficit, whatever it is, don't even know or can't define what that word means in the first place. And I honestly think metabolism is probably ahead of that in how many times people misuse it. Just fundamentally don't understand what it means in the first place, what's ruining it, what's boosting it, what's doing all this stuff. Would you agree that it beats out calories for amount of misuse?
Oh yeah. This is I would say my most oddly specific pet peeve in life is people talking about metabolism and it being broken or boosted. That makes me so infuriated because I spent so long studying it and people don't understand what it is. And it's not in the sense that like I expect someone to understand it
Mm.
because it's complex, but when you are making a notion about metabolism very outright and you have no idea what it even means, then it's like, what? You obviously do not understand how this works. So how are you making such a bold claim about it? Rubs me
You do
mad.
go off on that. If y'all should miss it, we should start a a subscription site for just like the pre-episode rants that we both go on. Those probably take up 50+% of Mariana's pre-episode rants of when we're just going on. I actually think that would be kind of funny one day. We just get on and
Yeah.
talk. What have we missed since the last week since we talked to each other?
Hmm.
What's been on our minds? I think that's an important part. Let's start there. Let's
Yeah.
define what it is before we go through how to improve it, whether or not you can boost it, the different parts of it, so we can better understand it. You have to know what we're even talking about in the first place. So
Yeah.
let's start there. What is metabolism?
Yeah. So to make this as simple as possible, I could talk about what it is for quite some time, but I'm not going to do that. I think this is what people can understand the best. So you can think about your metabolism or your metabolic rate as the series of chemical reactions in any living organism that creates and breaks down energy necessary for life. Make it a little bit simpler. It's the process in which our bodies convert what we eat and drink into the energy we need to survive and function in every single cell in the body. So your metabolism helps to keep your body moving by converting that food you eat into energy you need to survive. This helps you carry out necessary processes like breathing, all of our basic functions. And it has a significant impact on health because your body depends on metabolism to carry out all of its operations, including storing and burning fat, controlling sugar levels, blood sugar levels, maintaining the functions of your neurons in your brain. Every single process it involves metabolism. So it is super complex when you think about it at a cellular level. The metabolism going on in our muscle cells, our fat cells, our liver cells, all have metabolism. So I
It
think
sounds
that,
like if you break it, you would die. Is that
yeah, quite literally.
is that I was gonna say, is that
Yes.
sound rash or is that accurate? It sounds like if you broke any part of this, you
Yeah.
would just stop living,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. You can't break your metabolism. You don't have a broken metabolism. It's not easy to, people even say, oh, I destroyed my metabolism eating this way. No, you really can't. Like, you can't, it is not as malleable as people talk about it as. And there's
Yeah.
different components of your metabolism that you can alter to a degree. But this is something that has a variety of systems in place to keep you alive and functioning. And if you have an error in any of those symptoms, you will notice that as a disease state. So there are metabolic disorders that relate to metabolism, but it's not your entire like
It's not
when
one
people were,
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's not one thing. And that's where when you talk about your quote unquote your metabolic health, and when you get tested like with our friends over at Merrick, you'll see a metabolic panel. Your testing for overall all these different systems in your body, how you're metabolizing different pieces of it. So it's not just how many calories you're burning. That's not what they're testing. That's not what gets tested when you do a blood test. You're checking your glucose metabolism, your lipid metabolism, all these different pieces of it. So it's not one thing, I think, is where we can understand it from there.
Yeah. You
Moving
can
forward.
also look at it as there's liver metabolism, there's fat metabolism, there's muscle metabolism. And it is this series of reactions that takes place to create and break down energy, if you can think about it in a more concise sentence. But it happens throughout your body at different systems in your body. And muscle metabolism is going to be different from fat metabolism. So,
yeah. And it seems like, so we're essentially talking about different parts where we're extracting or breaking things down or then synthesizing it to use it for energy or using energy. There's almost those two swings of it. And I know we talk about catabolism and anabolism, but most people only talk about that in the sense of building and breaking down muscle and not in the sense of anything outside of that. Catabolism is breaking down muscle, or if something's catabolic or anabolic. If something's anabolic, like testosterone, very anabolic, it promotes building new muscle tissue. But I actually don't think I've ever heard it referenced outside of just muscle building or muscle breakdown.
no.
But it's happening everywhere else in our body too.
Those are the two primary chemical reactions involved in metabolism, catabolism and anabolism. So you have catabolic reactions and you have anabolic reactions, and those are involved in metabolism. So if you think about catabolic, it's not just the breakdown of muscle, it's the breakdown of molecules to obtain energy. This includes the breakdown of macronutrients into their simpler forms to provide the body with energy and basic building blocks required for growth. That's one example. Anabolic reactions is the synthesis of all compounds required by cells. So this includes growth and repair, which utilize energy that comes from our food. So many different processes involve building and creating more cells, which require more energy in every system, not just your muscular system.
Well, that's what I think is the coolest part, because I've never heard people talk about it outside of that, even though it's so apparent. It's happening everywhere. And I know we're going to talk about that in the different sections, like in breaking down food and the energy it takes to digest the food you eat. A lot of that is breaking down the chemical bonds in food, and it takes energy to do so. Now,
I have an analogy, Tony. I have an analogy that I made, and it's probably not unique. Probably someone has said this before. But one way to think about your
you're going to talk about a car, aren't you?
Yeah,
you're going to talk about a car.
You probably already had it. Were you going to say it? Did I take it from you?
No. The preface of it's probably not super unique.
Yeah. So one way to think about your metabolism is to view your body as a car engine that is always running. So when you're sitting still, sleeping, your engine is idling like a car at a stoplight. A certain amount of energy is being burned just to keep the engine running. And for humans, the fuel source, it's not gasoline, it's the calories found in foods we eat, beverages we drink, energy that may be used right away or stored, especially in the form of fat for use later. So that's one piece this is able to when we're talking about weight loss, energy metabolism, but it's one way to think about it.
But I think it's an accurate, even though people use it as a car definition, I think it's the most accurate way to look at it. A car engine that is constantly running, and you might not be burning a lot of fuel when you're just idling or sitting or sleeping or whatever it is. And you might rev it up like when you're doing high intensity exercise or things like that, but it's always running at a baseline 24/7. These processes are going on. And it's important, I think, to understand the different components of that. And what we're going to talk about and really dive, I think, deeper than we've ever gone before into TDEE, or your total daily energy expenditure. And this is what people refer to often, I think, when they say metabolism. They're referring to something called your TDEE. And there's 4 different components of that, or essentially anywhere that you're burning energy or burning calories through the day can be grouped up in one of these 4 sections, right? One of these 4 components. And the term boosting your metabolism, because we're going to be talking about that, it is a hot term on social media, any media, large stream media too, talking about things that quote unquote boost your metabolism and things that slow down or ruin or break your metabolism. And essentially what people mean by boosting, I just think it's poor communication. When someone says that you are boosting your metabolism, all that simply means, or the only way you can possibly do that, is to increase one of these four areas, or increase how much energy your body is spending in one of these four aspects. That's the only possible way these things can happen. And I think the way most people use it isn't correct at all. They're not referring to increasing one of these four aspects. They're talking about an ice bath. They're talking about taking cayenne pepper, which we're going to talk about in a section later. But I don't think most people who talk about quote unquote boosting it are actually giving you sound or solid advice to increase any of these four areas. Is that pretty solid consensus?
Yeah. In the term boost, I'm cringing even saying it because it makes it sound like it's can have this very significant impact. You can make these alterations to different components of your TDEE that may slightly increase your metabolic rate, but it's not going to be this huge impact that and it's going to you're going to notice it in the form of this drastic weight loss and this huge drastic change. No, it's going to increase your metabolic rate slightly over time, but it's not going to be something substantial that is just earth bending.
That's what I can't wait, because I broke down a couple examples of the actual math that goes down behind to what degree certain things can actually improve or burn more calories in these sections. And it sounds so meaningful at first, like you're saying, all these people are saying something that sounds like it's breaking science as we know it. Mm-hmm. And then you actually run the numbers and do the math and realize that it's not as significant as you might think. But to that point, improving your overall metabolic output, or how many calories you're burning as a whole on the day, it might take, not just in the moment of eating a pill or a supplement, but it might take days, weeks, months, years to do. But you can significantly improve it to give you so much more flexibility in the rest of your life and how much you're able to eat and still lose weight, or just eat and maintain your regular social life while maintaining your composition and health. So you can improve it to a pretty large degree in some aspects, but a lot of it is set in stone. I think that's where we want to start, by going over the biggest piece of this puzzle. So there's four components that make up something called your TDEE, or your total daily energy expenditure. And whenever we say TDEE, or total daily energy expenditure, just think about saying that's how many calories your body burns in a day. That's it. How many calories your body burns in a day. That's what your TDEE is estimating. So the first one we're going to go over is called your basal metabolic rate. And it's usually used interchangeably with resting metabolic rate, basal metabolic rate. They're more or less the same thing. You can use them interchangeably. The difference is just in slight definitions, where RMR is a little less strict in how you measure it. But they're both essentially, they're just measuring how many calories your body burns at rest. With your heart beating, your lungs breathing, your body needs to stay warm, your brain needs to think, how many calories that process consumes. And I know people say RMR, BMR all the time. You can use them essentially interchangeably. Do most papers use BMR or RMR then?
It kind of depends. I would say it only matters when you're writing like a paper or a scientific article, is where they would get a little bit more nitpicky about it, because it does have to do with measuring. So if you're doing a study, conducting a study, if you're measuring RMR versus BMR, like you have to be really clear about that. But other than that, like it's used pretty interchangeably.
Okay. So it's the biggest part of your TDEE, or overall calorie output. And it makes up, and this is a range, and these aren't hard set numbers, but it really ranges between 50 and 70% of your total daily energy expenditure. So most of the calories you're burning in a day, regardless, out of these four different sections that we're going to go through today, the majority is always going to be coming from this. And this is a cool section because it includes a lot, and a lot of it is predetermined by who you are in general. But it's also, and we're going to talk about this in the end, this is the piece individually that's impacted by metabolic disorders like hypothyroidism, things like this. It doesn't impact your TDEE as a whole. It impacts your BMR. So it only impacts a section of your TDEE, which I think is really important to note, because we'll actually talk about to what degree these different things can go through. And I found a cool example. I was telling you this before. This was my rant. I think I was listening to Mind Pump, and it was a guest on Mind Pump, because I like Sal and the guys. Sometimes they don't fact check too much. This was one of those where I was listening and I was hearing how this one guy was referencing research at how chess players and how your brain burns so many calories at rest, and your brain just uses the majority of what you burn in your BMR. that chess players who are insanely focused for an hour or two at a time, it's the equivalent to burning the amount of calories that you do at a high intensity exercise or cardio activity, the calories that you're burning while just playing chess because of how hard your brain is working. And I was like, that sounds pretty interesting, because I hate cardio and I would rather play chess for an hour than go run sprints. That's just me. But when I checked it out, because there is some truth to it, I think that's where a lot of this comes from. There's some truth to it. The brain at rest uses about 20% of your BMR or RMR through the day. 20%, that little like sack of mush in your head, which I thought was pretty significant, right?
Yeah. Checks
Is that
out.
what you would have guessed it to be or no?
Yeah.
Mariana's brain, maybe a little bit more because it's bigger. But it uses about 20% of your body's total resting energy. So for the average person, this translates to about 400 calories per day. But when you look at the actual research, I think it's cool but insignificant that cognitive tasks that require intense concentration and mental effort, like chess, they actually do increase total brain metabolism, or how many calories are burned by the brain, by up to 20% during these efforts. And this is where I was telling you that book before, which for the listeners going through, it's called Lying with Statistics, or How to Lie with Statistics. It's interesting because in the health industry, it's so easy to grab someone's attention by saying playing chess can boost your metabolic rate by 20% while playing it. That sounds insane. And then you could use a slightly different statistic to kind of downplay exercise. But if we actually do the math on this, let's say that your brain on average burns about 400 calories per day. Divide that by 24 hours in a day, and you're burning about 17 calories per hour just for your brain. 17. That's about it. So let's say that you're playing chess. I don't know how long you can play chess with intense focus, but that 20% increase only adds up to about 3 to 4 extra calories per hour that you're playing.
I wonder what reading does. I've been reading up a storm, and I'm.
Is that why you're looking so lean lately?
Guys, I started reading and I lost 20 pounds.
It's the new cardio. So I think it's cool. It does increase whole brain metabolism by about 20%, but that only equates to about 3 to 4 calories per hour. So whoever was quoting that it burns as many calories as high intense cardio, that's a little bit of an over exaggeration. But you can see how easy it is to lie with statistics. I could just tell you that focusing or using intense or doing intense cognitive tasks can help you burn 20% extra calories. Or I could tell you that it burns an extra 3 to 4 calories per hour. One sounds a little bit more grabby, cooler than the others. Regardless, I think it's pretty cool. But this is where your BMR is predominantly determined by a few more preset pieces. And I think to start off, the biggest one is going to be your body size and your body composition. I think by far this is the biggest one. Larger bodies, they just require more energy to function. So taller, heavier people just typically have a higher BMR. That's why extremely obese people can afford to eat so many calories per day. I was talking to you about a previous client who, I forget where they started, was in the 400 or 500 pound range, and had lost several hundred pounds eating over 3,000 calories per day just because of how many calories their body burned at rest. But even past that is where body composition, so not just your total body size, but what the body composition is made up of. Is it muscle? Is it fat? Where is it coming from? Body composition plays a role, but I think we both agree on how people overblow this. Yeah, right? Muscle does burn about 2 to 3 times more calorie at rest than fat does, just to maintain. So the more muscle you have, yes, the more calories you will burn just maintaining your composition. But again, is it really that significant? At rest, muscle, or a pound of skeletal muscle, burns about 6 to 7 calories per day. At rest, 6 to 7 calories per day, where fat burns, or a pound of fat burns approximately 2 to 3 calories per day at rest. So yes, it's 2 to 3 times more. So accruing 10, 20, 30 pounds more muscle will have a compounding effect over time, but it's a little overblown.
It's very, yeah, it is. To put it into perspective, if you're using a broader range, so some people, if they put on for every 1 pound of muscle in individual bills, let's say you gain an extra, you burn an extra 4 to 7 calories per day, as an example. If you want to increase your metabolism by 100 calories per day, I just want to burn an extra 100 calories, you would need to add 10 to 20 pounds of lean muscle mass to your body. That is so difficult to do. That is takes so much time and is difficult to do for 100 calories per day.
I mean, because 100 calories, it's a little bit. I mean, you could erase that pretty easily with
Yeah.
food, but 10 to 20 pounds of muscle, y'all got to realize that is 1 to 2 to 3 years of dedicated training and building that muscle, which we're not downplaying this at all. Muscle is so important for overall
Yeah.
metabolic health. We're specifically talking about calorie burn in this point, because from a metabolic perspective, muscle is going to improve insulin sensitivity, glucose metabolism, so many things that go along through all those other metabolic processes. But when you hear people saying how much more metabolically active muscle is, just know that it's not going to be the difference maker between you being ripped or obese just by holding that muscle at rest. You got to move your body. You got to do these things to be healthy. So muscle is massively important, but this aspect of it is usually overplayed.
Yeah. And I want to make a quick note just while we're on the topic of body size before we go on to the next piece is I know sometimes people think that, if you're shorter, you just have a slow metabolism, or you're taller, oh, you have such a fast metabolism. You're so lucky you can eat so much more.
Yeah.
And I think that also gets a little bit misconstrued, even though the shorter you are, the less energy your body requires to carry out its basic functions, of course. But the larger you are, the more cells you're made of. You have more cells, the more energy you burn because your metabolism is all your cells at work all day. But each individual cell is not more active or burning more calories per minute just because there are more cells. It proportionally is the same thing. It's not like your needs are going to be numerically different, but they're still serving the same purpose. It's not a matter of every single tall person is just going to be skinny because they're tall. If that was the case, then that would be the case, and it's absolutely not. But I just think that a lot of people think that just because you're short too, that means you automatically
Yeah, well, especially when it comes to fat loss, especially when it comes to fat loss, and when you throw around a calorie deficit, because you realize if you're someone who's 5'2" versus 6'2", how much less you're going to need to eat to be able to maintain or lose weight at the same rate. And that is a good point, because so many times people look at it and it's like, well, they see, I think the last time I went through a deficit, I think I was able to maintain 2,400 calories and lose significant body fat week after week, still eating 2,400 calories, where others might have to cut down to 1,800 or 1,600 and get a little bit lower, where I don't think you need to go too much lower than that. But someone eating 1,600 looks at me and says, like, you are so lucky. But you also don't realize you need that fuel because your body is burning through so much more. So you're getting just as hungry to a relative scale. You're burning more to a relative scale. It's not that you just get to eat more food, lucky you, or you have to eat less. It does come with its challenges, though, to smaller individuals because of how our society's set up.
For
and
sure.
Regardless, like 1,500 calories, that's not a lot of food for anybody.
No.
It's not a lot of food. So it does come with its challenges, but there's that relative speaking. And then to the composition part too, another add-on of importance of muscle is the more muscle you carry, that's how many more calories it's burning that we were talking about at rest. But you're also able to exert a lot more energy, burning more calories is what I mean by that, by having that much more muscle on you. So every movement is more forceful, carries more of that. So it carries through, but the metabolic impact that carrying more muscle has isn't as significant as most people think. Yeah. But it has a big to do with your BMR. Same thing with, and I think this is being more dispelled as time goes on, is age, where people used to think this was a huge determining factor of your BMR, how many calories you burn. How many times have you heard that?
Yeah.
Like my metabolism, it just doesn't run like it used to. I wish I was young again. When you're 30 or 40, it doesn't work like it used to. How many times have you heard that?
All the time. All the time. Especially you see it a lot in women, which is a whole different conversation. But yeah, I see it all the time.
Yeah, it's so common. If you talk to your parents, if you talk to someone older than you, that's just kind of a common held belief that's never been challenged. But I know we've talked about this once or twice on the podcast before. There was that really cool study titled Age-Related Changes in Human Metabolic Rate from Duke University, North Carolina. I think it came out in 2020 or 2022. I'm spacing the date, but that was the title of it. And what they actually did was they tracked human metabolic, or how many calories your BMR is burning, from, I believe it was 7 to 9 days old, upwards of 90 years old. So through an entire lifespan. And they actually showed that spiked initially during infancy and slowly declined until about the age of 20. But from the age of 20 to 60 years old, it didn't decrease at all. Your basal metabolic rate stayed the exact same, but there's an important note on this, dependent on total lean body mass. Meaning, if you're able to maintain your lean body mass, mostly coming from muscle, as you age, your BMR doesn't seem to slow down. But where I think a lot of people get confused and think their metabolism is slowing down is because they're less active. They're not working out as more. They're sitting more because they're not playing sports in college. All these different aspects that lead to you losing muscle, living a more sedentary lifestyle. So of course you're going to be burning far less calories per day. It's not that your metabolism just slowed down because that's what age does. It's that the different lifestyle factors that come with that oftentimes push it down. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. And honestly, I'm so glad you brought this up because this pisses me off so much when people say, like, people will also say that women go through like a second puberty, which is the most bullshit thing. It's quite literally not possible, but in their mid to late 20s, referring to like putting on all, yeah. And it's basically just talking about like, oh, like when you get out of college, you gain all this weight. Like, it's your second puberty. Like, what? It drives me crazy because, or like your metabolism is just like so much slower because now you're in your mid late 20s. It's no, you are comparing yourself. Are you comparing yourself to prepubescent you? To the you who wasn't finished growing? Are you thinking about you from 0 to 18 years old? How much growth you go through? And you can eat all of this food. You're all hungry all the time, eating all this junk. You're not putting on weight. Have you even hit puberty yet? It's so crazy to me that it just couldn't be further from the truth. Your body is so different in adolescence into your teens than it is in your 20s. Yes, but it's not from a metabolic standpoint. You still need to carry out all of these functions like you did, but you're not growing anymore. You've gone through puberty. Your life has changed. That's the biggest thing. Your life has changed entirely. Yeah. You're miserable in a job that you absolutely hate. You're under all this chronic stress. You never stand. You're staring at a screen all day. You're stress eating. You're depressed like most of Americans. But that's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to say that my metabolism's broken and I went through a second puberty that does not exist.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, it really
I could rant about that forever.
Snap on that. That's what it comes down to. Is it's not that your metabolism slows down as you get older. It's that your life changes and all the different components. Because we're talking about BMR right now. One of them being that body composition aspect. These things change. How much you're moving, how active you are. These things change. So is it your lifestyle or is it your age? So what we used to think played a big role in your BMR doesn't really play significance anymore. Now, the other big pieces that kind of come into this, and they all kind of fit into those first two categories, though. The next big piece is going to be genetics that play a role in your overall BMR, which I think for the majority of people lay somewhere in the middle, but there are definitely people on both ends of the genetic spectrum that burn far, far, far more and far, far, far less in their BMR than the average. I don't think it makes up more than a few percent of people on each end. I think people overblow it and think genetics play way more of a role for everybody. I think most people lie somewhere in the middle. There's those few little percent at the very tippy top and the tippy bottom, whatever you call that, at the very, very bottom, that you might see that will play a role, but genetics at least plays a role in where you're starting from. The next one is your gender. But I think, and this is something I haven't really thought about today, typically though, men do have a higher BMR than women, but I'm wondering how much of that is just because they tend to have more muscle tissue. They tend to have larger frames, larger bodies, larger pieces.
Yeah, I would say that's why.
I was going to say, do you think relatively speaking, the same exact size and composition, male and female, would have a much different BMR?
I still think that would be different because it might have to do with like visceral fat rather than subcutaneous. So visceral is like fat around your organs. Subcutaneous is the fat you can touch. And women hold on to more visceral fat than men in their reproductive areas because of we give birth. And so I don't know how much more, but I definitely would say that that would have a difference, but I don't know how much of a difference it would
Yeah.
be.
So, but gender plays a role. So gender plays a small role, but a lot of it does come down to those basics. How big are you? What's your body composition? And then the fifth and final one here is going to be health conditions and hormonal changes, which in my opinion is the most overplayed aspect of your metabolism that is a reason why it's quote unquote broken than any other. Like, for example, a metabolic disorder like thyroid disorders or hypothyroidism can influence your BMR, right? Other things like stress, all these different pieces. But hypothyroidism, at least in the research, is going to have the largest impact on suppressing your BMR, right? It's a condition where the thyroid gland just doesn't produce enough thyroid hormone, which plays a massive role in regulating your metabolism. There's hyper and hypo. Hypo is too low, hyper is too much, which people are like, oh, I want that. I want too fast of a metabolism. But that comes with a whole lot of negative health consequences that you're not thinking about. Anywho, it's usually just treated with thyroid hormone replacement therapy and medication over years.
Yeah.
But it's known to have the largest impact at decreasing or suppressing that metabolic rate. And it's also one of the most self-diagnosed health conditions. People that struggle to lose weight will oftentimes self-diagnose themselves with hypothyroidism without getting tested, blood work, or dismissing the blood work that says their thyroid's fine because they can't lose weight because of numerous other factors, whether it be consistency, tracking, anything else. But even this, so even hypothyroidism only decreases your BMR. So remember this, not your total daily energy expenditure, just one part of it, your BMR, by around 5 to 15%, and up to about 20% in severe cases. But the majority of people with hypothyroidism, it only suppresses about 5 to 15%. And again, let's just do the numbers here. If your TDEE, how many calories you burn a day, is 2,500 calories, that means your BMR is ballpark 1,500 calories. So even if you were on the higher end of that and it decreased your BMR by 15%, that means you're only burning about 225 calories less than if it were functioning properly, which isn't great, right?
It has an impact.
Yeah, it's going to impact your energy, your fatigue through the day. It's going to impact you in many different areas, but that's in no way, shape, or form going to prevent someone from losing weight.
Yeah.
In no way, shape, or form going to prevent someone from doing that. If we were talking it decreased your BMR by 1,000 calories per day, that would be tough. That would be tough to stay consistent with, but it's not as big as people think. And it's often because it's so hard to understand. So people just slap it on as a reason, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And you see, like, it's so important to consider. That's why, like, if you are a coach and you're listening to this, like, make sure you get that whole health workup. You know what's going on the inside of your clients' bodies, because that's going to play a role in how you cater to what their diet routine is going to be like how much they're working out. They're going to be at a slight disadvantage. You want to consider all of that, but it by no means means that your metabolism is broken.
Yeah.
I don't like to undermine these metabolic disorders, but there's a lot you can work with here, like get properly diagnosed, and there's also proper treatment. And it's still going to always be something you have to consider and put you at a slight disadvantage, but it doesn't mean that this is like the end all be all. There's nothing else I could do.
And especially if you're a coach, because I've seen this a more common little branch of, if someone's tracking calories and tracking that they're in a calorie deficit and not losing weight, please, please, please do not self-diagnose with one of these disorders, a metabolic disorder, hypothyroidism. Get your blood work done. It's not even that expensive anymore without insurance. For our premium members, they get 10% off that Merrick lab that we put together with them. It's like less than $100 with that, where you can get your thyroid panel checked with all of it. Get checked. Don't self-diagnose, because a lot of the time it just comes down to problems in the trade or problems in the practice, not tracking correctly, overestimating how many calories you're burning in a workout, whatever it might be, rather than, oh, you have a severe disorder or disease, right?
Yeah.
So how you increase this section, because we want to finish with each section talking about what you can do to actually, quote unquote, boost it. But this one is one of those, it's a slow burn, something that you can
boost,
increase,
but not really.
So it's a slow burn that you can increase over months and years. It's not something that you can take a pill that's going to boost your metabolic rate or your BMR rapidly, right? I think the small things would be building more muscle over time. So you're not just burning more calories at rest, but you're able to exert more energy through every activity that you do. And then from the hormonal point of view and just overall health, just maintain a healthy hormone, right? Focus on eating enough food, eating a wide variety of micronutrients like your magnesium, your vitamin D that we've talked about in previous episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Fix your sleep or focus on your sleep. Listen to that sleep episode if you haven't already. That's the more and more I look into it, I'm like, that is the lowest hanging fruit to improving your health, your body composition, is fixing your sleep and learning how to do that.
Yeah. That's also, like, I know we talked about it in that episode, but inadequate or lack of sleep can decrease your BMR. And
Yeah.
so that's, I mean, focus on one thing at a time, but definitely don't ignore that.
Yeah, it's massive. So focus on those. Which are they as sexy as taking the new hottest supplement that can boost your no, it's not, but it's actually going to work instead of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So focus on those big parts, but that is the biggest piece of the puzzle, right? Is BMR. So that's number 1 of 4. Now, the next 3 we're going to talk about are going to be exercise, activity thermogenesis, or just calories you burn through exercise, non-activity exercise thermogenesis, or the movement, the other 23, 24 hours a day, and then your thermic effect of food, or TEF, right? The calories you burn digesting the food you eat, which is pretty cool. We're not going to spend a ton of time because we talk about this one a lot on exercise, right? EAT. This is what shocks most people. The smallest piece of your TDEE is your exercise through the day.
Mm-hmm.
Because how many people, when you think, okay, I got to create a calorie deficit, I got to burn more than I eat, it's add more exercise, add more exercise, add more exercise, when that is the smallest piece of the puzzle. And a good way to look at it, because it's hard to think about this, it's the wrong place you want to focus if you want to increase your total daily energy expenditure. A good analogy would be looking at your income, right? I think this is a cool analogy. Your BMR versus exercise is kind of like your salary versus the occasional holiday bonuses you might get, where BMR is kind of like your monthly income, or BMR NEAT, the other things we're going to go over. It's like your monthly income. It's a fixed salary. It's a good amount. You get consistent with it, and it forms the bulk of your total income when you look at it from a yearly basis. But it's not as exciting as exercise or those occasional holiday bonuses you get at Christmas time or New Year's or whatever it might be. They're cool, and it can be a lot at once, which is exciting and beneficial to add to your income. But it's not going to be nearly as substantial to your salary when you look at it on a year-to-year basis. Same thing when it comes to exercise. If you're just relying on those bonuses, you're not going to make that much. You're not going to move the rocks that much, rather than focusing on the big pieces of the puzzle, like your BMR, your NEAT, which we're going over next. You burn a lot of calories there, yes, but it's not what you want to really rely on, I think, for increasing this section. Would you agree?
Oh, I entirely agree. It's like when I try not to judge, but I judge. I'm judging. I'm sometimes a judgmental. When I see people just like post this Instagram story of the calories that they burn, like on their Apple Watch or on a treadmill, I'm like, why? What is that? What is that doing? What is it actually doing? One, it's not accurate, and two, it's not significant to anything really.
It does hurt, because it's kind of it's a cool little post, but I feel you. Listen.
Like, I like when people like, oh, I post my workout, I did this, but when it's literally just like, I burned this many calories, like people highlight that. I'm like, well,
if you're listening to this, you do that, I'm not judging you. It's not the most factual or correct way you can do it, but at least your boy Tony's not judging you. I'm trying to get Marianne over there. She's close. She's close, week by week. But I'm not judging you here. But that is a good point, because not only that, like, you're just probably not burning as many calories through exercise as you think. The Apple Watch is a really good example, but your Apple Watch is probably not being honest with you when it comes to how many calories you're burning. It's just not. And it's not by just a little bit either, right? And we've brought this up before. I know we did. I think this was over a year ago. We've been a podcast for over a year. How cool is that? We didn't even celebrate our first birthday. Oh, that was just a realization. Oh, that's going to throw me off for the rest of the episode. But anyway, we've talked about this cool study before on here, but Stanford University tested the 7 most popular wrist-worn calorie tracking devices. And at the end of the paper, what they found is that even the most accurate of the 7 trackers was still off by about 27%, while the least accurate, the Pulse is what it was, had an error rate of up to 93%. Okay, so let's break down the numbers here. That means if a device tells you that you burned 500 calories during a workout, you could have burned as little as 259, almost half of that. And yes, I know this is what we get a lot of crap for. Yes, This study was done over 5 years ago, and technology has improved, but they will never be that accurate because there are so many different things that go into knowing your knowing how many calories that you burn that they cannot track. I think that's the most important thing, because people will talk crap. It was published in 2017, this study. Well, what about my new Garmin? What about my new Fit? No one can. That's not why. It's not the technology. It's that there's so many things that go into estimating your calorie burn that they cannot track, like your BMR, how much muscle mass you have, how biomechanically efficient you are at the exercise you're doing. There's so much that goes into it that these do not track. And all they're really taking into account is your heart rate and your movement.
Yeah.
That's it. Like 2 of hundreds of variables that go into determining how many calories you're burning. Right.
Yeah,
so this is why, and people are like, well, how do I know how many calories to eat? This is why knowing your TDEE and what we're going over today is a much better way of knowing how many calories you need to be eating when it comes to weight loss, when it comes to all these things, than anything else, right? Your total daily energy expenditure, not your workouts. That's why we're not spending as much time on it.
When we measured BMR in my exercise physiology lab, I hated it because I was so claustrophobic. And you have to be so still. Like, you have to be so still and so calm and not move at all. And they put this big, because it measures oxygen, and this big almost space helmet, it looked like, and it has this big tube coming out of it because it's measuring your oxygen levels and whatever else, I don't remember. And I hated it so much, but you can't, like, the level of technology to get an accurate reading of, and then also even just energy expenditure, like during exercise, actually measuring that, the contraptions you have to put on your mouth and your head to measure the oxygen levels. And you can't do that with a little device.
Yeah, especially one that goes on your wrist. One that goes on your wrist, which it was actually kind of cool. I saw, do you know Jeremy? I think it's Ether. He's big on YouTube, big on social. He makes phenomenal fitness content. And he just did a competition where there was this new device. It was probably stupid expensive, but it was one of those like Bane style masks that you strap on your face that goes back to a little backpack that you wear, that is trying to become like the most accurate representation of how many calories you're burning. He used it in a video to where him and his friends all ate McDonald's, added up the calories, and then saw how long it would take to actually burn those calories off.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which was a funny video because they were racing for it. But it was kind of a cool device because you could just buy this backpack. I didn't check how much it was or what the name was. I should have.
It's probably so expensive.
But yeah, it's just because you can't take in that many variables in a little watch, unfortunately. And they can still be used for cool things like tracking your resting heart rate, all those things. Now we're going on to the meat and potatoes. It's my favorite section of your metabolic rate. And I think it's yours too. The non-exercise activity. This is what matters.
Hence what I do. Like, I can't keep my hands still anytime I record. Like, I always have to be touching something or moving my hands. Yeah. That's that's going into my neat.
We speak in Italian on the podcast. We're just moving all the time. Doesn't make any sense to people who aren't watching it, but NEAT, right? Or non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Okay. So the sum of all of the movements done outside of the gym is what this is taking into account. Okay. The sum of all movements done outside of the gym. And although it's not the biggest component of your metabolic rate or how many calories you're burning in a day, it is the most malleable component, or where you can increase the most. So it could take as little as 5%, someone sedentary, upwards of even 20 to 30% based on the lifestyle. So that is a huge range, and where you can focus on the closest thing you can do to quote unquote boosting your metabolism is right here. Okay. Like this is the closest you can get to it. Right. So some of this movement is voluntary. So when you go shopping, or you're cleaning your house, or you're at work, or just anything recreational, right? Any recreational activity. While other components of NEAT are more involuntary, like fidgeting. I know people like to talk about that a lot. Fidgeting, and this is honestly more insane than I thought. Now, I've heard Huberman make kind of outrageous claims. Still love you, Hubie. He said you could burn up to 2,500 extra calories per day by fidgeting. You can't. I'll just cover that out. You can't. I love like 98% of the words that come out of your mouth. But you can actually burn a pretty significant amount. Now, minor fidgeting, like toe tapping, shifting in your seat, or occasional hand movements, that might burn an extra 100 to 150 calories per day. Still not a little, though. It's not a lot, but it's not a little. but constant and more intense fidgeting. So people who are more restless through the day, and you see those kids in class who are just constantly moving, tapping, moving around versus like someone who's just slouched over looking. I don't know. I was more the slouched over one when I was growing up. Were you someone who was a fidgeter?
It's always shaking. And I always have to I used to get up and walk around. But I'm always playing with my hair. So I think that was a
Okay. So
displacement
always
thing
a
for me.
slight little movement, not bouncing
Yeah.
off the walls, but a slight little movement.
Mm-hmm.
But people who are constantly moving throughout the day, or people who just cannot sit still, always tapping, shifting, making larger motions, can burn up to an extra 200 to 800 calories per day in research. 200 to 800 calories per day. That is not insignificant whatsoever. And sometimes when you look at people and you just think, oh, that person has such a quick or fast metabolic rate. I know we were talking about the genetic aspects, and I think a lot of people will just shoo it off as genetics, when a lot of the time, these people who you think have just such a fast metabolism or can eat whatever they want and stay thin, a lot of their time, there's these smaller pieces that are moving that can add up to a lot. Like maybe they just fidget a lot more than you or someone else, and they're burning an extra 800 calories per day. That's kind of insane to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And other aspects of your NEAT, another big one is standing versus sitting, right? And I actually pulled it up, and this is research out of the endocrine research unit in Rochester, Minnesota, not New York. But they actually found that obese individuals spend approximately 2 hours more seated daily compared to lean individuals. So just sitting, 2 extra hours per day sitting. And if these obese individuals, this is out of the study, were to stand for this time, they would increase their total daily energy expenditure by about 350 calories. That's a little chunk. And all these small things, right? You're not boosting a significant amount here or there, but all these small things can really add up. And if you were to stand up or stand while fidgeting, your energy expenditure would increase anywhere from 13 to 94% compared to sitting, and 154% if you were just walking or slowly moving. And I know a lot of people consider walking through the day or your step count as exercise. I consider it more of a part of NEAT because it's not set exercise. If you're going for a set walk, that would be exercise. But for the majority, I consider your step count NEAT. Is that where you would rank it?
Yeah. Not if you're on the treadmill doing an incline walk for 30 minutes, that, I'd say that's exercise. Depends on where your heart rate is at. But if you're just going for a 10-minute walk, if you're walking to and from, I consider that NEAT.
Yeah. Like the 15 trips to the bathroom I take to pee every day because my bladder is the size of a rock.
But it also makes sense when you think about sitting versus standing, because your postural muscles are engaged so much more when you're standing versus sitting. It takes more energy to stand than it does to sit. It makes sense when you think about metabolism that way, when you think about it in terms of energy. I feel like it can kind of click a little bit. Oh, this is what this is. This is what it means. You don't have to completely understand it on a cellular level, but especially for energy metabolism, it puts a lot into perspective.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Like the more active you are through the entire day. And this is where I think people don't give this as much merit as it deserves, is because so many people, and this is that time, I mean, this is going back to goal setting and expectations. A lot of people do expect weight loss to be fast or body composition change to be fast, especially if you're going through recomp or anything else. And if you look at it so zoomed in, standing versus sitting, how many extra calories are you going to burn in a 10-minute period standing versus sitting? Nothing significant. But if that's spread through hours across the day, through the week, through the month, through and across several months, that's where NEAT adds up. Or if your daily step count is simply a few thousand higher each day. I know we did the episode on 10,000 steps, what you should set your goal for. Even if you just increase your step count by 2,000 to 3,000 a day. If you're at 4,000, aim for 6 to 7. If you're at 6 to 7, aim for 9 or 10. Increasing it a little bit, are you going to notice a difference in the scale by the end of the week? Probably not. Yeah. But over the course of months, it is insane how much that daily movement can compound. Now, as a result of all these factors, the standing versus the sitting, the walking, the fidgeting, TDEE between similar people can differ by up to 2,000 calories per day out of this paper, or more, depending just on NEAT alone. So I think maybe that's where Huberman was misinterpreting it. It's not just your fidgeting can burn that much, but you can burn up to 2,000 plus calories extra per day compared to someone who's more sedentary through all factors of NEAT. how much you're walking, how much you're standing, how much you're fidgeting. All those components go into it. That's why this is the most malleable aspect of your metabolism. You're not going to be able to increase your BMR by 2,000 calories per day.
No.
Nowhere close.
No.
Nowhere close. But I think this is where I know I work with my clients, especially if you're doing recomp or fat loss, and I know you're the same way. This is usually one of the biggest focuses if someone's got a weight loss or fat loss goal.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
For sure. And something that it pulls at my heartstrings because that I feel very passionate about is in the US, there is no prioritizing this aspect of NEAT and obesity and prevention. This is something that we could change structurally and have guidelines for if we cared about public health in our systems of government at a state level, federal level, in terms of how we build our infrastructure, how easy it is to stand versus sit, how easy it is to walk versus sit. Our modes of transportation, there's an escalator everywhere. There's always going to be, obviously for handicap reasons, there's always going to be an elevator for people who cannot walk to and from. But the distance between shops and our modes of transportation for work, businesses, if you supply standing desks, if you incentivize going out and going for a walk at your lunch break, if you organize a walk for your lunch break, there are so many things that other people could do, larger organizations, government officials can do to promote walking more or standing more. And it's tough being in America because it's so easy to not move versus you go to Europe, that completely changes. That's why people will go to Europe for a year and they lose weight because they're moving more. And not moving in terms of I'm exercising more. I'm getting up, I'm moving to and from. I'm not sitting all day.
Yeah. Your environment's huge. And another reason 700 million, why I love San Diego, it's a walkable city. I've never lived in a walkable city before. And it's incredible when everything you need is just in a walking distance. You just end up moving so much more. My average step count is like 9 to 11,000 without trying. I don't have to add in extra special walks. It's just like that without trying to, but that's the environment. Where in places before, if the store, if your work, if everything else is a driving distance away, it's not set up like that. So the biggest way that you can take advantage of this aspect of your day, I hate when people give the advice to fidget more. I think that's dumb. I'm not gonna lie.
That's so dumb.
I don't think you can. I've never
you can't force yourself to fidget.
The effort it's going to take you to think about fidgeting and take away from work or anything else is going to outweigh whatever calories come from fidgeting, because it's only adds up if you do it a long time. So who freaking cares about fidgeting? If you fidget, great. If not, there's other ways to do it. Biggest way, look at your daily step count. The easiest way is to break it up into chunks. Take a 10-minute walk after each meal. And we've talked about that with Stan Everding for multiple other reasons of just getting your step count up, but other metabolic improvements you see, especially eating it right after a meal with insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism. But adding a 10-minute walk after each meal is going to significantly increase how many steps you take per day. But it's not adding in a 30-minute, 60-minute walk at the end of your day, which for most people, they're going to get tired. They might plan on it, but it's just not going to get done.
Yeah, don't be like me. That's what I do.
Yeah, try and push it off. Look at a standing desk. I can't do a standing desk, right? So one of my rules is I just set like an hourly timer to get up and just move a little bit, even though my bladder usually sets that timer off for me. So if you don't have a standing desk, just look at ways that you can move more. It's kind of funny. I have a dumb rule that Karina, my girlfriend, hates me for, but it's whenever there's an option to take stairs over an escalator or elevator, I 100%, I don't care if we're running late. That's when she killed me at it, is when we were running late at the airport and I had both of our big bags and I'm like clanking up. I forget what airport. It was one of those stupid long stairs and we were tired. And I was like, I got to do it.
I refuse to take what's the thing that just, you step on it and it just glides you along.
Oh, the one
in
that,
the airport. It's like the magic carpet. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It almost, yeah.
I like that name if it's not.
But I never use that. And Jack always gets so mad at me because he gets so far ahead. And I'm like, I'm going to walk this distance. And the escalator, I'm not taking it unless if I am impaired.
Even though your environment might not be set up to move more, there are a lot of choices you have in your day. And I know it sounds so stupid and cliche. Park at the back of the parking lot. Do it. Everywhere you go. Park at the back of the lot. I know it sounds stupid and insignificant because it's, what is it, an extra minute of walking? Who cares? If you do that every single time, if you start looking, We were talking about this in the mindset episode. I think we just did the one on self-esteem. If you're focusing on looking and finding ways, your brain will start finding ways to move more throughout your day. You'll find ways to set up your home office. You'll find more routes that you can take a longer walk. You'll find more ways. Oh, there's stairs available, even though I've been taking the elevator every day. Just don't. And again, it's insignificant if you zoom in, significant if you zoom out and add it up over weeks and months, which is huge. This one's cool. So we've already gone through 3 of the 4, right? Your exercise or your EAT, your non-exercise movement or your NEAT, NEAT, your BMR, the biggest section of the day. And now your final and 4th, which people I do not think take into account, is how many calories you burn simply just digesting the food you eat. This is the more food you eat, the more calories you're going to burn digesting. And we're going to talk about this. And it's like the car engine again. Okay. Like you got to put energy in order to have energy to use. But here's where this thermic effect comes from, or the calories that you take digesting it. It's not like when you just eat your food and it goes in your stomach, all of a sudden, like poof, you just have energy available to use. That's not how it works. Oh, we have energy now. The energy is contained in these chemical bonds of the food you eat, and your body has to digest it, absorb it, assimilate it into tissue. It requires energy to do all of this. So your thermic effect of food, almost better thought of just the calories you're burning through digestion. The thermic effect of food is how much energy is required by your body to extract the energy out of the foods you eat. And different foods are more challenging or require more energy to extract the energy out of. And I think this is really, really cool. For example, fats have a thermic effect of about 0 to 3%. And what I mean by that is if you eat 100 calories from just fat, you're net going to get 97 to 100 of those calories out of it. Carbohydrates, for example, are a little bit more challenging. Their TEF or thermic effect is about 5 to 10%. So if you're eating 100 calories from carbs, you're getting about 90 to 95 of those calories because you're burning 5 to 10 of them in the digestion process, where protein's thermic effect is 20 to 30%. That's pretty freaking big.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you eat 100 calories from just protein, you're net consuming about 70 to 80 because you're burning 20 to 30 calories in that digestion process, which is another reason why protein is super helpful for fat loss, recomp, and just maintaining your composition, because you're burning a lot more calories just digesting it. Now, I want you to decide if this is significant or not, because if we took the average person and let's just say you doubled that person's daily protein. So let's say they were eating 150 grams of protein per day and you double it to 300 grams of protein per day. How much of an effect is that going to have? It's going to burn roughly an extra 150 to 200 calories per day. Is that a complete game changer? I don't think so. You could eat that easily in a couple buttercups or something like that. But again, it's all these small pieces, those spaces that you can burn an extra few hundred by eating more protein, by walking more, by doing these things. You add enough of those together and you got an extra 1,000, 1,200 calories per day that you're burning compared to someone who's not doing those things. So this is where TEF comes into, and I did have a note too, where people say that eating a lot more, overfeeding, increases this aspect. Overfeeding, although yes, you're going to burn a little bit more calories digesting it, it has more of an effect on NEAT, or your non-exercise activity, more than I thought. I don't know if you've looked at these papers at all, but there have been numerous studies showing that an increase in NEAT can get up to about 1,000 extra calories per day with overfeeding. So a lot of the time, people who just eat more food naturally are just more active. They fidget more. They put more energy through every movement they do, that they can burn up to 1,000 extra calories per day just by that. So I know we've talked about that in reverse dieting. And when you just eat more food, is it magically increasing your basal metabolic rate? Sometimes it might have an impact there, but more often than not, it's going to impact these smaller areas that you're just not looking at, like moving more, all this stuff that it can really lead to.
Yeah. And I think I know we've talked about this before, but especially if you do have a goal to lose weight, during weight loss, your metabolic rate inevitably is going to slow down. That's going to happen. And prioritizing protein, higher protein intake can minimize this effect. It's not going to prevent it from happening, but it's going to have enough of an effect to make it a little bit more manageable. because then it goes into kind of like the satiety effect of things. And oh my goodness, maybe I still have the same appetite, but now I have a lower metabolic rate significantly because I've lost all this weight. There's some indirect effects of protein as well, but I feel it just has so many benefits.
That's why we just don't shut up about it. And we haven't stopped shutting up about it since day one. But that's a good point, because I mean, honestly, let's look at any reason. So whenever someone's coming at you, because now that you are starting to have a better idea of what metabolism is made up of and where you're doing this, you can now, I think, start to better see where people might be misleading you when they say things like it's slowing down or breaking your metabolism or it's boosting your metabolism. For example, a lot of people will say, and this isn't inaccurate, but like you just said, right? When you lose weight, inevitably your metabolism is going to slow down or it's going to shrink. Think about why that is. Oh, well, you're becoming a smaller person, which we know really has a big effect on your BMR. You're probably holding less muscle. You're eating more, or you're eating less. So your thermic effect is also decreasing. So it's decreasing all these different avenues. So if anyone's ever claiming something to your metabolism that isn't impacting one of these 4 buckets, don't know why I call them buckets, but these aspects, there's not as much truth to it.
Yeah.
Like cayenne pepper or these magic ingredients or things like that boost it. Is that going to directly impact one of these 4 aspects? No. Okay. Don't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Like, that's where I feel like it comes down to these 4.
Zero food, drink, even supplement even can have this direct impact on your metabolism that it's going to boost it. And especially if you're looking at foods, a lot of people, like you mentioned, like spicy foods, or some people talk about green tea boosting your metabolism. You may see really in the initial terms, like directly following consumption, a slight increase in metabolic rate, but that's just has to do with how like digestion and absorption of these types of foods. It's not going to long-term change your metabolism in any way, shape, or form. It's this temporary increase because of eating these types of foods that is very negligible. It's so insignificant, the change. So
yeah, I mean,
there's no magic fix that there's nothing to fix. Typically there's nothing to fix. It's just about optimizing a lot of behaviors that
I was even thinking when it comes down to like green tea extract or caffeine, or even the most powerful supplement you could probably take is like ephedrine, like we had talked about.
So
that, but it's more because it's a stimulant that's increasing your heart rate. It's increasing these different aspects of that, where I think ephedrine and caffeine combined, even to the max, has up to a 5% increase on your BMR a day. Not very significant. And that's the biggest thing you can do. And that's because they're stimulants working together on your nervous system. So that's where you can really see through any of these supplements. They're not going to impact it. Or if someone loses weight by taking green tea, like you're saying, did that on like a secondary basis or second order consequence impact any of these? How much total food they consumed, if they ate more protein, if they started moving more because of it, if they did any of these other things that we talked about, was it the green tea or was it the fact that they were moving more because they had more energy? You know, it comes down to these 4 pieces.
Yeah. You also see this with like things that are going to boost your metabolism. You see all the time. Foods. Also, people will say eating more frequent, smaller meals will boost your metabolism. The only thing that this can do, if you're looking at boosting your metabolism for a weight loss perspective, right? What this actually might do, say someone did start eating smaller, more frequent meals, that could spread your meals out throughout the day. That might help you not get too hungry, might prevent you from overeating. That might be a good habit for some people. And because of that, makes it a little bit easier to stay in a deficit, lose weight, right? It's this behavior has nothing to do with your metabolism. And if that's the case, if you like to eat that way, great idea. But eating the same amount of calories in 3 or even 2 larger meals has absolutely zero difference when it comes to its impact on your metabolism. Not one whatsoever. One might just be, you might be suited for one better than the person next to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you're having 2,400 calories a day in 3 800-calorie meals or 6 400 calories a meal, doesn't matter. You get the same thermic effect that we just talked about. That's not driven by frequency meals, just how much is coming in and what they're made of.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So it's really interesting because I hope this gives people a better idea of calories in versus calories out. There's a whole lot more. Everything that we talked about is calories out today. There's a lot. We just spent more than an hour talking about what makes up calories out. So that's why when we say like a calorie deficit, it is a simple idea. It's very hard and complex to rule out, because this is just one half. We just spent on over an hour, and we probably could keep going.
Yeah.
Over an hour on, and that's just how your body's burning calories. That was a lot. That was fun.
But it's also why, like, just one more statement to wrap it up, but it's why if you are going to focus on anything, if you're on a weight loss journey, stop focusing on trying to over exercise and run your body into the ground with cardio, or eating as little as possible, or trying every single other diet. Like, if you need a starting place, put your energy into these lifestyle changes, because not only is this going to having more sufficient sleep, making sure you're not as stressed all the time, making sure you're moving your body more, making sure you're recovering. That's all going to be good for your metabolism, but that's also going to be very helpful from a weight loss standpoint, making it easier to be in a calorie deficit because you're not paying attention to doing these really drastic things that are going to push your body to the edge that you end up hating and not wanting to do anymore, that really don't have a significant impact. Exercising doing 2 hours of cardio every day actually has very little impact on your metabolism.
Yeah.
So
what you do every single day for the next 6 months will outweigh, no matter how high intensity, no matter what you do for the next couple of weeks, no matter how high intensity, how crazy you get, what you do every day is going to make the difference. So focus there. But that's your metabolism, folks. That's your metabolism. If you have any questions or aspects that we might have missed today, shoot us a DM. Let us know what you think. But that's what we got today on understanding your metabolism, the science behind it. We'll finish with a dare. I dare you, anybody listening to this, if you have a moment where you see like an elevator, escalator, and then stairs, if you take a picture of you taking the stairs or a video and tag me on Instagram of you taking the stairs, this week only, because I've also talked myself into things that I should not have said in the first place, I made some misprints of bookmarks. I made some bookmarks because I'm trying to make merch, but I'm like, I don't want lame shirts or hoodies. So I made bookmarks. I'm making like croc jackets. This is a really cool prize. I'll send you a misprint. So one that I didn't even use in the first place. I'll send you a misprinted bookmark and I will put it in a handwritten letter. If a week from when you listen to this, you tag me in your stories going up the stairs when there's elevators available. Heard it here first. So premium, we'll see y'all Friday. If not, we'll see everybody else back on Monday.